At the first Global Disability Summit in London, the government's announced it will become the first country in the world to call for an end to all overseas orphanages. But campaigners have accused Theresa May's government of hypocrisy for hosting the event. That's as the UN says the UK has committed grave and systematic violations of disabled people's rights. Earlier this month, MPs on the Public Accounts Committee said the government had created a culture of indifference after changes to the disability benefit scheme saw around 70,000 people miss out on thousands of pounds. For more on this, I'm now joined by Morrison from Disabled People Against Cuts. So we hear that the UN highly critical of the government's dealing with the disabled in this country. How do you see it being so hypocritical?
Well, that was exactly why we were outside the Global Disability Summit today. The UN Disability Summit said, as you said, that the UK government was found guilty of grave and systematic violations against disabled people's rights. They published a report with a series of recommendations. The government has refused to implement any of those recommendations. They've simply ignored them.
But in what way is the government perceived to be guilty? Is it just purely a lack of money?
Sorry, can you say that
again? Is it purely a lack of money? Why the government is being seen guilty over this? Because there are very harsh words, aren't they, coming from the UN? And obviously you're angry with the government. Is it just simply not enough funding for the disabled? What's the main...
No, it's a choice of funding. Absolutely. It's designed to be... I mean, for instance, universal credit is designed to be a punitive regime. It hasn't saved any money at all. This isn't about funding.
But it's the initiative, isn't it, to give people work opportunities? Isn't it the aim behind the government's scheme and the way its policy is to encourage people to go back to work to help the disabled? And it's not just about money as such, it's opportunities.
That's definitely the PR and the branding that they're going with, but that's absolutely not the case. We know with universal credit that it's just simply there. It's been designed to harm deaf and disabled people, and that's why we were there today, to highlight that message to people. Members of that UN Disability Committee that published that report last year said that the UK government can no longer call themselves world leaders in disability. We were there today. We absolutely support giving aid and support to deaf and disabled people's organisations in other countries, but we know that our government is not well placed to lead on this. And I hope that the message that we've been trying to give out today has got through to the international delegates who were there, as well as people in the UK who still aren't aware the extent to which austerity and cuts have disproportionately affected deaf and disabled people in the UK. So
how were you doing that? Holding a separate event, and you think you were being listened to today? How were you actually bringing attention to yourselves today?
Yes, so we were outside the Global Disability Summit. So we were there with poetry, with speakers, with music. It was a festival of resistance. It was showing the strength of disabled people in spite of years of austerity and cuts.
But the government was criticised about those underpayments for the disabled, and yet it has reacted, hasn't it? It said we will be responding to this and providing more cash.
Yeah, the government said a lot of things, and yet it's failed to deliver on them all. The most important thing that the government could do at the moment is implement the recommendations of the UN report. It's ignored those recommendations and it's just failed to implement them.